Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri is proud to be sponsoring this portion of broadcasting on KNEO. Owned by Judy and Danny Harper, Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri specializes in French Bulldogs. For more information, the phone number is 417-628-3083.
Welcome to Crosspoint. An interactive program featuring ministers and leaders of the Christian community addressing the issues that are challenging the church today. Here's your host, Mark Taylor.
Welcome to Crosspoint. I'm your host, Mark Taylor. You know, there's many questions, there's needed answers about end-time prophecy. And to discuss this is nationally syndicated host, Alex McFarland. I want to welcome you back to our Crosspoint program today. You've, of course, written a few books over your years in the ministry and everything, and, of course, we have you on the radio. People hear you here each week on your broadcast. You and Bert Harper, I guess, have now put out this new book, 100 Bible Questions and Answers on Prophecy in the End Times. I would say with what's going on in our world around us, this is becoming a very interesting discussion, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and thank you for your interest in the book. But as we get started, let me just say thank you for having me on, and thank you for running many of the shows that we do. You have a great reach with the radio, and you touch millions of listeners, and we're just honored to be a part of it with you.
Well, it is a big help, and, of course, the folks at AFA are great to work with as well, and I know you worked with them, and then of course, you're all over the country speaking and going to different places. You're a pretty busy man.
Well, the Lord has blessed me so much, and let me just be very quick to give God all the glory. I got saved when I was 21 years old. I was in college, and just somehow right away, I just knew that people need the Lord. People need a relationship with Jesus Christ. And, I was very shy and very much like an introvert and didn't talk to much of anybody. But, I got saved, and I just knew everybody, they either have a relationship with Christ or they need a relationship with Christ. And it's not even that hard to talk to people about the Lord. In fact, moments ago, as you and I were preparing for this interview, moments ago, I was talking to a young man, and absolute total stranger, but I just invited this young man to church. And he looked at me, and he began to pour out his heart how he, had gotten in some trouble with the law, but he had tried to recommit his life to Christ. And so we prayed together, and just a very brief interaction, but I encouraged him to be in church on Sunday. And he said to me, he said, "You have no idea how much." He said, "Just this morning, I was asking God, give me some direction, show me what to do." And I guess my point is, for every believer listening, I truly think every single day there are ministry opportunities. And sometimes it just takes a little bitty nudge to encourage somebody toward Jesus Christ. And, everybody out there, I firmly believe people all around us are thinking about their relationship with God. And for those of us that have found Jesus Christ and we can sow a word, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:2, one sows and one waters and another reaps the harvest, but God gives the increase. And just for every Christian out there, I think we are every day to be sowing the seeds of the gospel into the lives of the people all around us. And that's what our books are about. That's what our radio shows are about. We just want to be sowers of the seed of the gospel into the hearts of people everywhere.
Well, I'm glad that you are, because we need more people doing that, because we've got a lot of lost people out there in the world. And like the song says, Steve Green or whatever did that, people need the Lord. They sure do.
Yeah.
No doubt about
it.
They do. Hey, looking in the book here, you wrote this book, 100 Bible Questions and Answers on Prophecy in the End Times. I'm looking in the contents of the book. Section 1 talks about the last days. Now, number 3 is the Ezekiel battle, 38. There's a lot of people talking about, is that where we're headed? And then on number 7 is the Psalms 83, a future battle. Now, which one of these battles comes first? And isn't one of these, the Ezekiel battle, isn't that really a very important part of the people, maybe the Christians leaving the earth during that time?
Absolutely. And thank you for being willing to devote some time to talking about this book, this brand new book published by Broad Street. This is the 3rd book we've done with Broad Street Publishing out of Minnesota. But the book is available everywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, wherever you buy books. But these are 100 Bible questions from our radio listeners. We do a daily live show called Exploring the Word. And then we, all year long, oh my goodness, I bet by email, we probably get 5,000 questions a year. I kid you not, from people all over. And I want to get to the battles, but let me just say, I got to just 2 weeks ago, today actually, led a man to the Lord in Romania. He was a German man thinking about God. He found us online, began listening online. He had very poor English, but he was doing a job in Romania, and he emailed me, and I gave him my number, and he called me. We had 2 hour-and-a-half phone conversations. Now listen to this. This man, he was at a point in his life, probably in his early 30s, he began to think about God. So he started going to an Islamic mosque for like over a year. But he said he just didn't have peace about it. And I explained Christianity, explained the gospel. He prayed to ask Jesus Christ to come into his life. And he said that he disavowed Islam. And anyway, we sent him some materials. We've been trying to encourage him now in his walk with the Lord. But these questions, like the 100 Bible questions on prophecy in the end times, I believe they're the questions on the hearts and minds of people. Now, regarding the 2 big battles, and we've really seen, like Ezekiel 37:38, talk about nations of the Arabian Peninsula that fight against Israel, and I do believe that the secular world, as represented by Russia and China, and the Islamic world, as represented by the Arabic nations of the Middle East, they're going to attack Israel. And what's really amazing is that here the Jewish people represent like 1% of the Earth's population, very proportionately very small ethnicity. And yet throughout world history, and certainly right now, it's at one of the biggest proportions since the Holocaust, probably. Anti-Semitism is so rampant in this world. The animus against the Jewish people is very tragic. And anti-Semitism, it seems like it's the one form of racism that gets a pass. We're in this age of human rights and social justice, and yet the one form of racism that the media and the academic world seems to tolerate and even encourage is animosity against the Jewish people. But there's coming an even greater battle. And this I think, is probably what the Psalm 83 is talking about, that the Battle of Armageddon. Now, I personally believe, let me say this and I'll throw it back to you, there is coming the rapture, the calling out of the church. And there'll be a 7-year tribulation period culminating in the greatest battle in world history, 200 million soldiers in the Valley of Megiddo. I've walked that valley where Earth's final battle will take place. Now, the point of orthodoxy on which all Christians agree is that Christ is coming back. Jesus is literally coming back. And I realize different Christians disagree about different aspects of the end times, and some don't believe in the rapture. I do. I believe in the rapture of the church, 1 Thessalonians 4. But I think what is undeniably evident before our eyes is the instability of the world. And over, really since about a year before COVID, you would see this in the news of, political science commentators and international affairs writers that would say the world is a powder keg, and the doomsday clock, the hands are at 11:59 and 30 seconds. And we don't know, but I would say to everybody listening, what we do know is how to have your house in order. Because yes, whether by nuclear war, whether by, international calamities, or whether by the sound of that trumpet and the eastern sky opens up, we are to be ready to meet the Lord, and we can do that by putting our faith in Jesus Christ.
Now, you just mentioned Russia. Russia is really making a lot of noise right now, and they definitely can't be trusted. And what does the Bible tell us about Russia in the end times? You have that on page 23 of your book. You talk about that.
It's interesting. Russia is, I think, absolutely referenced in the Bible, and you're right. Just like, China and Germany and many of the Turkish nations that, became Muslim, there are a number of nations that have these imperialistic, world domineering aspirations. And Vladimir Putin absolutely, he is not content to be one among many. I mean, he wants to dominate the world. I've got a missionary friend who was a missionary for 20 years in Petersburg, Russia, and actually knew Vladimir Putin 25 years ago. And they, like you said, can't be trusted. And see, here's the thing. Putin claims to be a Christian. Yeah. Vladimir Putin claims to be a Christian. But my colleague who knew him said that he believes he is one of the most dangerous men on the planet right now. And by the way, parenthetically, let me say that what's very sad, I know there are a lot of Christians in the Ukraine that have died, but at the same time, Zelensky, president of the Ukraine, is just getting his people killed in fighting Russia, because the chance of the Ukraine prevailing over Putin, Vladimir Putin would die before he would let Ukraine ultimately get away with their uprising. And I realize that, Ukrainian sovereignty is something that, that they want and sounds good on paper. But, I personally hope that the United States of America does not fund or support a Ukrainian war against Russia, because it's just going to spill more blood and it's going to damage our relationship with Russia. And not that I feel like Russia is, it's no great thing necessarily to have a relationship with Putin or Russia, but in terms of holding, at least to some level, holding in check someone who is a great threat to the West, it is more in our interest to have good relations with Russia than to placate or subsidize a war of futility by the Ukraine against Russia. But Russia, in collusion with China, will attack the nation of Israel. Of that, I am confident.
No doubt on that. That is part of the bear from the north, I do believe. So,
yes.
Now, you've written a lot of books, and of course, this book here, it's the latest one you've got out. But if people want to know more about this book, the 100 questions and answers on Prophecy in the End Times, or other work you've done, maybe your speaking engagement or your ministry as a whole, because I know you do a lot of conferences and youth events and stuff in the summer and stuff. Tell people how they can go about doing that.
Well, God bless you. Thank you. Yes, just my name, alexmcfarland.com. Super simple, alexmcfarland.com. There are over 200 articles on my website that I've written and a searchable database of answers to questions. And I'm on the road speaking all the time. I love to, by God's grace, I've done a lot of evangelistic crusades and revivals, but I've also done a lot of Q&A and debates at universities, and I'm always available. We are, in 26 and following, we're putting a lot of emphasis on revival in America, that our nation needs a spiritual awakening so desperately. Yeah. And so teaching evangelism to the church and giving the principles of revival that are absolutely imperative for turning our nation around. Yeah, I would love to communicate with any people on that. So, hey, America, call us. We're here to serve, and we're here to promote the spiritual restoration of the United States of America.
Well, we're going to be back with more with Alex here in just a moment, folks. Stay with us. This is Mark Taylor. If you miss a broadcast of Crosspoint, you can always go to our website at www.kneo.org and click on the programs page. There you can access the current Crosspoint program as well as the last 4 programs that have been aired. Never miss another Crosspoint program again. Go to www.kneo.org today. And welcome back to Crosspoint. Today talking with Alex McFarland. You hear him every week here on the radio station. And Alex put out a new book here, 100 Bible Questions and Answers on Prophecy in the End Times. And there's a place here on page 48, number 17 there, it says, what does the Bible mean that Elijah must return before the end times? How does that work into the part of the Bible end time prophecies?
Well, you know, the book of Revelation 4 through 20, talks about there'll be 2 witnesses. Now, on the one hand, let me say that Christ's second coming is very much tied to his first coming, I believe. And in the spirit of Elijah, who could pray and cause drought on the earth, I think John the Baptist was the forerunner mentioned in Isaiah, 40. Here's the thing. There's this prophet Elijah that will return before the day of the Lord. So John the Baptist, preached about the coming of Christ. Of course, by the way, with Christmas coming, I would encourage people to read Luke chapter 1. It's a beautiful story of Zacharias and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist, and then, of course, Mary, the Virgin Mary, who carried the baby Jesus. The first coming of Christ, there was John the Baptist, who was in the mold or the spirit of Elijah. But in Matthew 17, the disciples asked Jesus, why did the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Jesus said, indeed, Elijah is coming and will restore all things, but Elijah is here already. Now, that was meaning John the Baptist. But in the end times, during the tribulation period, there will be Moses and Elijah here on planet Earth. I really believe that. And this will be right before the end of time in the tribulation period, and they'll do miracles. They'll be martyred and lay in the streets of Jerusalem, and the whole world will look on the 2 witnesses, very probably Moses and Elijah, and then they'll get resurrected and raptured to heaven just a little while before the Battle of Armageddon. But, Elijah will set foot on planet Earth again, but I believe it'll be in Jerusalem during the tribulation when the Antichrist is just wreaking havoc on the world.
Now, you mentioned the Antichrist and the false prophet here in about the midway of the book. Page 91, I'm looking at it, talking about the meaning of the number 666. Is that some kind of a historical figures? Why What's the importance of those three numbers?
Well, what's interesting? Numbers play a lot of significance in the Bible. And I would caution people to not obsess too much about, I'm not talking about numerology in the sense of fortune-telling or some secret code or something like that, but numbers do have significance. And let me recommend an additional book. I love to recommend good books. But there was an author some years ago, E.W. Bullinger, Bullinger, and he wrote a book, and it's very balanced. It's not wacko, but it's a very balanced book. It's called Number in Scripture. Now, the number of God, or the number of perfection, is the number 7. It's a number of completeness. But the number 6 is the number of a man. And 6 is like 1 short of 7. So 6 is something short of perfection. But the number, and this is in Revelation 13, the number 666. That's like the ultimate, most worldly, most humanistic, most fallen. It's like short of God, cubed, 666. Now, what Revelation 13 says is, and by the way, the devil is a counterfeiter. Satan has some power. God has all power. Jesus resurrected from the grave and beat death. But in Revelation 13, the Antichrist will survive what appears to be a mortal wound, and people will believe that he has power over death. But the Antichrist will force or compel all people to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and without this mark you can't buy or sell. Now here is something that is an interesting detail of our times, is that for a good 20 years there's been what is called biotechnology, where microchips can be put under the skin, or now even like a tattoo that's invisible but visible under ultraviolet light. Many people have dogs and cats, pets that are chipped. Prize, thoroughbred horses and even pigs are chipped, and people can run a scanner over the skin. You can't see the chip, but it's in there. Now imagine, a microchip that's just almost small to the point of being nearly invisible, but with your entire medical history, your financial history, all of the digital footprints you've ever left, it's in the skin. And imagine going into a store, and you don't need cash, you don't need a credit card, you just walk through the scanner. You have enough cryptocurrency to buy or sell. It is coming to that. And let me say to everybody listening, you do not want the mark of the beast on you. Now, it won't be marketed as, hey, get the mark of the beast. It'll be the world leader, finally, heaven on earth, the great economic, political, international leader. And not only that, he's God. He is. He conquered death. I mean, this is the Messiah. Well, there are so many people that are going to be deceived. And you have to, folks, the time to prepare and purpose in your heart that you would die before you would take this mark or this microchip under your skin. You must purpose in your heart now. But Daniel 9:26 calls him the prince who would come. 2 Thessalonians 2:3 calls him the man of lawlessness. 4 times in the New Testament we see the word Antichrist, but he will deny the true Christ, the Lord Jesus. And rather than liberate people, he will martyr millions who refuse to take his mark, because the Antichrist will demand worship for himself. He will be deceitful, an authoritarian, and he will impose the mark of the beast or execution. And that's why the Bible says that not only the 7-year tribulation, but really the second half of this tribulation period will be a time of trouble on earth such as history has never, ever seen before.
Yeah. There's another part here that is beginning to catch a lot of attention and talked about. It's number 48, page 113 of the book. Who is Mystery Babylon? Because there's big questions about, I don't think they're going to rebuild the, town of Babylon, as we knew it in biblical times and stuff like that. We're not going to see that. But what is this area that they talk about, Mystery Babylon?
It's interesting. 31 or 2 years ago, Saddam Hussein, before he died, Saddam Hussein wanted to rebuild Babylon.
Right.
He really did. And there was a lot, Dr. John Walvoord of Dallas Seminary wrote, there was a great book, probably a little, so much has happened, but it was called Oil Armageddon in the Middle East.
Right.
Where Dr. Walvoord talked about how Saddam Hussein wanted to rebuild Babylon, and Hussein believed he was the modern-day successor to King Nebuchadnezzar. And, people ask who the Antichrist is going to be, and I want to get to the Revelation 17, but throughout history, I think there have been a lot of would-be Antichrists, like Haman of the Old Testament, of course, Hitler in the early 20th century. In the mid-1980s, when I first became a Christian, I interviewed a very, very, very elderly pastor who was ministering during the time of the Holocaust. And people thought, obviously Adolf Hitler must be the Antichrist. He's part Jewish. He's bent on world domination. He's killing Christians and Jews. Could he be the Antichrist? And while he was very anti-Christian, there is coming not only a great world leader, but a great world system. I don't mean great in terms of good, but I mean great in terms of formidable. But Revelation 17:1 presents this, quote, great prostitute sitting on many waters. And verse 5 of Revelation 17 calls her, quote, here's this title, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now, there's a woman riding this beast. The beast is the Antichrist. And this woman is described as having 7 heads, representing 7 mountains and 7 kings. A lot of people associated this with Rome, because Rome was called the city of 7 hills. But here's the thing. The Bible is very literal. Maybe the ancient city of Babylon will get rebuilt. But I tend to think there are going to be at least 7 world systems, or maybe even nations. But I think about this. You've got militant secularism and Marxism. You've got Islam, of course, which is huge. You've got the Eastern religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. And you've got, of course, even Satanism. And then you've got something that is absolutely a religion. I assure you it is a religion, and that is wokeness and moral relativism and really the LGBTQ trans movement. Because here's the thing. Let me digress for a moment. I want to get back to Mystery Babylon. Shortly after my friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated, September 10, Ben Shapiro, whom I have interviewed, Ben Shapiro did a show on how the trans people get radicalized, because there was Covenant Christian School in Tennessee, and there was Annunciation Christian School in Minneapolis, and Charlie Kirk got shot. Anything that could qualify as a religion has an origin story, origin, purpose, and convictions. Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is my identity? And how do I defend my convictions? And like when Charlie Kirk, and 2.5 weeks before Charlie Kirk got shot, he and I were on stage in front of an audience from 17 U.S. states. And we were answering questions. And by the way, on same-sex attraction and gender confusion, I was giving not Bible verses, but the most current mental health research that when people have, gender confusion, there are a number of what are called antecedent factors that cause that. But Ben Shapiro was saying, and it's really true, like with gay or trans people, when you speak against gay or trans convictions, people take it personally with a religious fervor. And it's not just that they disagree with a voice of dissent, but they feel like they are being personally attacked and they must fight and kill. It's self-defense. Like the Tyler Anderson, if indeed he acted alone in shooting Charlie Kirk, he felt like not only was Charlie Kirk just countering the LGBTQ trans narrative, but it was an attack on him personally, and shooting Charlie Kirk was an act of self-defense. I was on a Q&A stage with Charlie Kirk before he got shot, and Charlie Kirk and I both were giving a counterpoint against some of the assumptions of the LGBTQ trans worldview. And this female, although she was in a hoodie and her affect was very masculine, but she was clearly a female, she said, "You're erasing me, you're erasing me." And I said, no, I'm giving some of the most current research by mental health professionals. This is not directed to you. I mean, believe it or not, the depression and the inferiority complex of many trans people is a severe, severe form of narcissism, to think it's all about me. But anyway, back to Revelation 17. The LGBTQ trans dogma is absolutely religious in nature. So what's going to be the Mystery Babylon? I fully believe it will be a final political, moral, religious, economic, societal system, the fiercest, most ardent surveillance state. I mean, everything you say and do, certainly anything you might post online, will be cataloged, recorded, scrutinized. Anyone that breaks lockstep with the beast will be severely dealt with. Now, the reason it's compared to Rome and Babylon, because those were world empires. 1 Peter 5:13 refers to Rome as Babylon. But what it's going to be is this. While Rome and Babylon represented world powers that were anti-God, anti-truth, and persecuted anyone who disagreed. I mean, you think about it, Babylon is mentioned 260 times in the Bible, the second most significant city right behind Jerusalem. And Babylon in the Bible is often referred to as the city of the devil, which is different than Jerusalem, which is viewed as the city of God. But here's the thing, the coming world system, and believe me, this could be implemented like today, but the coming world police state that will be mystery, in other words, it's spiritual in nature. Babylon the Great, it's political and economic. The mother of harlots, it's Roman, it's religious, but it's enforced like the most severe police state. It will dominate the world. It will subjugate all humans who are not ready to die for Christ. And Mystery Babylon will be the ultimate city of Satan on planet Earth to fight against God and his kingdom And the high casualty rate will be the loss of several billion souls, actually.
Yeah.
Folks, the time to determine what city of which you are a citizen is now, today, by calling on Jesus Christ and pledging allegiance to Him.
Folks, stay with us, and we're going to have more right after this.
Offering words to encourage, teaching to inspire, and truth that defines real life.
This is who we are, what we offer, and what you can expect.
91.7 The Word.
And welcome back to Crosspoint, talking today with Alex McFarland. You, along with Bert Harper, have put together 100 Bible questions and answers on prophecy and the end times. Tell us again how people can find out more about this book, Alex.
Well, thank you very much. The book, 100 Bible Questions on Prophecy and the End Times, published by Broad Street. It's available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. And, anybody that reads it, it would be a great honor if you would write us a review on Amazon.com and tell your friends. And there's a lot of fresh research about AI, events in the Middle East, and just came out in October of 25. And it's part of our series. We did 100 Bible questions about 5 years ago that were, questions from our radio show. Then we, 2 years ago, did 100 Bible questions for families, marriage, family, parenting. And then this is 100 Bible questions and answers on prophecy in the end times, which we get so many, literally every day of the week, we get questions, are we in the last days?
Yep.
And things like that. So we felt like it would be a book that people have an interest in, and indeed, I believe they do.
Yep. Here's what's interesting to me. So much stuff is changing in our world that when you read some of this stuff, that we've read for years, all of a sudden now it's alive. It's more alive because things are happening. 51, for example. What are the 10 horns of the beast of Revelation? Okay, for years we've heard about 10 countries that'll come, and that could be the case. But now you wonder, could that be 10 nations like they've thought, or could it be 10 leaders, 10 very powerful leaders in the world that would be reshaping? We see some pretty powerful people out there, these technocrats and stuff like that, and different ones. So there's a lot of things that make you question. And then, Alex, we talk about Mystery Babylon, what we were just talking about, and we talk about how things are happening. We also talk, hey, is America in Bible prophecy? So you can probably answer some of these questions, but you see what's going on in New York City, and you begin to wonder, hey, there's the second biggest bunch of Jews there besides Israel, and is there a reason for what's happening in New York to run the Jewish people back to Israel? And, is there something about, this Mystery Babylon? It just makes you have a lot of questions. So maybe you could answer a few of those for us.
Well, it's interesting. Yes, all of my Christian life, and I've been a believer, coming up on 40 years, actually. But, back in the 80s, there are a lot, we've had a lot of great teachers in our life, people like David Jeremiah and Hal Lindsey. And I'll tell you somebody who was great. This is a name that really shouldn't be forgotten, Jack Van Impe. And what's interesting? Let me just say this. Do you remember that name? He was on television.
Yeah, Jack Van Impe, you bet, yeah.
Yeah, he was a friend of one of my theological mentors, Dr. Norm Geisler. Geisler died in, I think, 2019, and I think Jack Van Impe died just at the very, very beginnings of COVID. So we're coming up on 5 or 6 years ago. But and Jack Van Impe was a prophecy preacher, and always the 10 horns of Revelation 13 were referred to as like 10 nations, maybe the restoration of the European Union.
Yeah.
It was interesting. The New York Times actually ran a very complimentary obituary of Jack Van Impe when Jack Van Impe died. And the New York Times had this, obituary, and they said, hey, maybe late at night on TV you saw this preacher, waxing eloquent about the end of time and the rapture and Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, and it said maybe you thought that he was a crackpot or something. But they said, give Jack Van Impe credit for over 50 years. He stuck to the same message that Jesus is coming back, that we will go to a one-world, cashless society, that technology will basically end up controlling all of our lives. And they said, whether you believe it or not, at least you got to hand it to him. He kept the same message for decades, and they said, shockingly, the world of 2020 looks more and more like the dystopia Jack Van Impe has been warning us about since the 1960s. Fast forward to 2025. By the way, just last week, and again, let me, before time ebbs away, let me say what an honor it is to be on. I really appreciate this. Appreciate you having me on. Just last week, the VP of Microsoft said, if AI doesn't scare you, you just don't understand the technology. And I was on the phone yesterday with someone who he does security work for the U.S. government, a very trusted colleague who said that behind closed doors, many, technocrats are concerned about, if not terrified, the rapidly growing capabilities of AI.
Yeah.
Let me just read this regarding the question about the 10 horns. Revelation 17, 12, and 13, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. Now, we've always thought about kingdoms, like, the European kingdoms.
Right.
But what about the technology overlords? Think about PayPal. One of the world's biggest economies is PayPal. PayPal has a bigger GDP than many nations. Of course, Zuckerberg and Meta, a.k.a. Facebook, Meta, they're, billionaires. There's Elon Musk, who I pray for. I pray for Elon Musk. There's, I don't know, maybe, in stock there are what are called the Magnificent Seven. There's Microsoft and Apple and Tesla and NVIDIA. Well, maybe the 10 horns that are 10 hugely influential centers of power that align with the Antichrist. And 1 hour is signified as a brief space of time. But these are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. Whether it's nations or whether it's technological forces. I mean, one thing the Antichrist will use to his advantage is the wired up, the absolutely surveillance state, worldwide web, and what an apropos word, a web, like a spider web or a net that is capable of trapping things. But the technology of the planet, the major tech centers that could literally control the world. Let me give you an example. Let me digress for just a second. All right. Bill Bright, did you ever interview Bill Bright, the founder of Campus Crusade?
I never interviewed him, but I did get to talk. Was where he spoke many times.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was very privileged when I went to Liberty University for undergrad and grad school. But Bill Bright, in the fall of '89, taught our evangelism class, which his son Brad, told me it was one of the last classes he ever taught. He was a very busy man. But Bill Bright had this illustration he would give, and he said, look, if everybody led one soul to Christ, and in the next 12 months, that person led one soul to salvation, and then in the next 12 months, that person, then we would run out of people in under 8 years. And Bill Bright's point was, he said, Christ has told the church in every generation to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. And God would not give his church a nonsensical assignment, something that's impossible. So it must be possible for the church in any generation, it must have been possible to fulfill the Great Commission.
Correct.
And Bill Bright had a math problem where he would show in under 8 years the world could be evangelized. But people would say, I remember the skeptics would say, well, that's impossible. To get the world under one regime, that's impossible. All right, fast forward to February of 2020. I remember because I was on the road, we had a big conference. February 1st of 2020, nobody much had heard the word quarantine, mask mandate, COVID-19. All right, by the second week of March 2020, 6 weeks later, I was watching the news, and they showed a village in Zambia where, just coincidentally, I had been to preach outside of Lusaka, Mwembeshi. And even in the bush country of Zambia, people had masks on. And my point is this. When the whole wide world, government, industry, media leaders, academics, in just 5 to 6 weeks, planet Earth, the world, went from being only nominally, tangentially familiar with COVID. 5-6 weeks later, the whole wide world had masks on.
Yeah.
That's how fast this thing happened.
Yeah.
Now, my point being is the chess pieces are on the table. Spiritually, the whole wide world is in carnality, if not darkness. Economically, the world, with a few points and clicks, we could be a cashless planet. Politically, very unstable. And listen, I know that not everybody is going to agree with what I'm about to say, but I'm telling you, it is the grace of God that we have Donald Trump in the White House. And I know many people think he is like a human wrecking ball, and that's exactly what the United States of America needed to hold off the woke globalist agenda. But I will tell you, with the rapidity with which COVID protocols were enforced, mandated, inflicted on planet Earth, the Antichrist regime will get set up and operative with blinding speed. And it appears as if planet Earth and history itself, it's like H.G. Wells said 75 years ago, in The World at the End of Its Tether, the world is on a trajectory that cannot be turned back. And H.G. Wells, I don't know where he ended up spiritually, but as a Christian, I would say we are irrevocably headed towards, if not rapidly headed towards, the end of human history, the return of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Folks, the way to be ready. Jesus is as close by as a prayer. Put your faith in him today.
Yeah. Well, Alex, we're out of time, but again, tell people how they can find out about this book that unlocks the mysteries of the end times, 100 Bible questions and answers on prophecy in the end times.
Well, thank you. Well, my website, alexmcfarland.com. I'm always on the road speaking. I would love to come to your city, no matter who you are, where you are. Reach out to us. We will come. We will teach, preach, evangelize, and open Q&A. And, of course, all of my books, 21 books that God has allowed me to write, including the most recent 100 Bible Questions and Answers on Prophecy in the End Times, available at Amazon.com every Barnes & Noble store and wherever you buy books. And if you have a local Christian bookstore, I would urge you to support your Christian booksellers too. But thank you for your interest, and thank you for having me on today.
You're welcome. Glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
God bless.
And folks, a good interview. Boy, a lot of good information there that we had with Alex today. And he's written a lot of books there, 100 Bible Questions and Answers, talking about the end times. Well, the other book, on the other hand, the Holy Bible, that's where we get all those answers from. And you need to know the Bible. It's good to read books like Alex has. And it's always definitely important every day to read your Bible, because it's the road that leads you to eternal life. It's inspired words of God. It helps people like Alex put together books like this to help us understand what's going on in our world. The Bible, it contains the most important words you're ever going to read, and certainly never follow. Be sure and join us again next time as we again discuss issues that are affecting the church. Have a great week and allow God to use you for His purposes so that greater things can be done. Make your life count in God's plans for eternity. I'm Mark Taylor.
Crosspoint is a program produced in Studio 101 at KNEO Radio. Not all of the views on Crosspoint reflect those of the management or staff of KNEO. You may contact the Crosspoint program at 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850, or by email crosspoint@kneo.org. You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week: Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.